The link to the folder I'm opening is in the video description. Now, don't try and download the entire folder at once, because if you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to accidentally zip the file. So what you're going to do is you're going to download the Photoshop file. The Photoshop file has all the layers. It's a PSD. Therefore, you can't just open it on your Chromebook. You're going to have to open it in Photopea. So we're going to go to Photopea right now. I'm going to do File Open. Make sure you're logged in. If it's red, you're not logged in. So log in with Google, with your school account. X this out, and then File Open. Date modified today. Skeleton dance animation assets. Okay, so what you're going to do is, at this point, you're going to hide that bottom layer, which has the entire turnaround in it, and you're just going to have the rest visible. Now you can see it's separated into layers. So what this will give you the ability to do is it'll give you the ability to rotate different parts of it, and therefore to create a series of figures. So I'm going to go to the left upper arm, that's this, and I'm going to do Edit, Free Transform. And if you look very carefully, there's a little dot right in the middle there. Move that up so that it's at the elbow. So that it's at the shoulder. And you can rotate the arm a little bit. And then you're going to do left lower arm and hand. And you're going to do Edit, Free Transform. You're going to move this up to the elbow. You can actually move it. And then using the rotate feature, if it's not working the way you want it to, you can just exit out. It might be better to do Edit, Free Transform, move it first to where you want it to be, then take the dot in the center, move that up to where the elbow is, and then rotate it. And it should work better that way. Okay, so I'm going to hit the check mark. I'm going to just move it slightly using the Move tool. And now I'm going to export what I see as a PNG. So you just do File, Export as PNG. And it will save it as Skeleton Dance PNG. Okay. Now I'm in the same layer, Edit, Free Transform, move this to the elbow, don't ever forget to do that, and rotate it a little more, hit the check mark, and when you do File, Export as PNG, and you hit Save, it's going to save it next to the other one. But if you open it, you'll see it has a 1 in parentheses at the end. Okay, and that's the next one will have a 2 in parentheses at the end. The next one will have a 3 in parentheses at the end. So it'll save it in a sequence without you having to rename them. Now I'm going to go to the right lower arm and hand. And I'm going to do Edit, Free Transform. And again, I'm going to move that to the elbow so it rotates properly. Just hover your mouse or your cursor until you see the rotate indicator. And I check it off, and then I'm going to save it, export as PNG. And this next one, if you open it, you'll see it has a 2 in at the end of it. So in this way, you can make a sequence of movements, a sequence of PNGs, and then you can take those PNGs and you can put them into the Wick editor, and you'll have a dancing skeleton. So that's the first part of this assignment, is creating that dancing skeleton. But the second part of the assignment is that you need an environment for this dancing skeleton. So I'm just going to give you guys a real quick breakdown of, foreground, middle ground, background, and landscape. Okay, so I'm going to do File, New, okay? And what I'm going to do is, it's a new project, but I'm going to go down here to Screen, and then I want to go to Full HD. Okay, so if I click Full HD and I'm going to make my background transparent and I hit Create, it's automatically going to be the same size as the screen in Wick Editor. Okay, in other words, if I do image size, you'll see that 1920 by 1080. The only thing is the resolution is a little bit low, so I'm going to turn the resolution to 300. Just to make it so that if I ever wanted to print this, I could. Okay, so that being said, I want to create a background for my project, for my skeleton, okay? So that my skeleton has a place to dance around. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a horizon line, and we all know that the horizon line is where the earth meets the sky. So if I take my brush tool and I make my foreground color, I'll just make it black. And I take my brush tool and I make a line. It doesn't have to be a straight line. I could make it like mountains or something. I'm just going to make, kind of an interesting kind of line here. All right. Now, here's the thing, that the line is very thin. So instead, I'm going to make it a little thicker. So let me just change my width of my brush to, I don't know, a little fatter. Okay, that looks good. And now I'm going to do Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, and I'm going to take my fatter brush and I'm going to make my horizon where the earth meets the sky. And I'm not going to make it too flat because that would be boring. So that's far away. That's my background, okay? Now, I'm going to color the background, but when you color something that's really far away, you don't want to use real bright colors, okay? I'm going to unlock the background. You want to use kind of dull colors because backgrounds are supposed to recede. They're supposed to look far away. If the colors are too bright, they're going to pop out at you, and it's going to look like it's in the foreground. It's going to jump out at you. So I'm going to make a gradient, but I don't want it to be a real bright color. So I'm going to pick like a green, but not a real bright green, kind of like that. And the other thing about backgrounds is that usually the colors are very faded. They're not real vibrant, okay, or intense. So I'm going to blend it with white because that way it looks kind of like it's fading off into the background, okay? Fading off into the distance. So I'm going to make my gradient, and I'm going to just start at the bottom and I'm going to go up. I don't want to do that unless I have Control Z selected just the bottom part of the picture. So hidden under here is the wand tool. I'm going to just select down here, and you can see it just selects the bottom part of the picture. The top, the sky is left alone. So I'm going to now go make my gradient, and I want it to end up being white and start out being green. And I'm going to play around with it until there's more green showing at the top. So I might need to mess around with a little bit. Okay, so I finally got the color I want. Now, I'm going to actually create a new layer. New layer. And I'm going to make this layer, I'm going to hide the first layer after I've drawn the next kind of horizon line, the next bump in the road. So I'm going to go here. This is my middle ground. I'm going to take my brush tool, and I need black for my foreground color. Okay, and I'm going to create a middle ground, and the middle ground is going to start here or here. And again, it doesn't have to be straight. That's fine, okay? Now, I'm going to hide the background. So now we're going to deselect. So now we're in the middle ground. We're in that layer, okay? Now, I'm going to pick a slightly brighter green, okay? So I don't remember what my green was. So I've got it. Let me go back to my background color. Okay, so I'm in here. And this was the green I had before. It was this color, okay? And I need it to be a little brighter, a little more vibrant, a little more yellow maybe. So, but I still want it to be green. So let me just compare. Okay. All right, so I like that. Yeah, that's my foreground color. So now I'm going to hide this color. I'm going to unhide this color. I'm going to make sure my cursor's in this color so I know that I have it right. And I'm going to create another layer with my gradient. So first I wand here, and now I'm going to make my gradient tool, and I'm going to start white and go green, or there, the other direction. I like that. Okay, so now this is what it looks like. Let me do select, deselect. Let me look at how they look together. Okay. Now, I'm looking at that background layer, and I want it to fade more. I like how bright the middle ground is, but the background, I want it to fade more. So I'm going to do image, adjustments, and I'm going to do hue and saturation, okay? Now, if you desaturate it, or you make it lighter, now let me just reset it. Okay, so maybe I just need to make it lighter. Let me reset it again. So you have to just play with it a little. You can also completely change the color. Okay. Now I'm actually going to reset it. I think it was fine before, so I'm resetting it. And I'm Xing this out. I'm not going to do anything with it. I changed my mind. So now I'm going to add another layer in the foreground. Okay, so this one's already called background. This one will be called middle ground. Okay. And I'm going to do layer, new layer. And I'm going to call this one foreground. And you can see it's like a stack. This one's on the top and it's in the front. Okay. This one's in the middle, it's in the middle. This one's in the bottom, it's in the back. Okay. So now I'm in the foreground. I'm going to make one more layer. Where's my brush tool? I need some black. All right. Now I'm in my foreground. Now I'm going to hide the other layers. And oh, I need this color, so I've got to unhide this layer. I'm going to be in this layer. I'm going to go to my foreground color, and I'm going to click here to get my green. Now, I need a more intense, vibrant, bright green. So I'm going to go here. I think I'm going to go here. It's a little yellow, so maybe I need to make it a little bluer. Maybe I need to go down here. All right, that's not bad. Okay, there. Now that's the green I want. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go up here to this top layer. I'm hiding the middle layer. I'm going to use my wand to select it. There's my gradient tool. Okay, now let me just do select, deselect, and let me get all the layers together. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to think about, now I've got the layers getting brighter as they go towards me. I need to think about if I were going to move my skeleton through space. So I'm going to go to my background. I'm going to get the black again. Okay. And just in my background layer, I want to make a road. And that road has to get fatter as it comes out. And it has to be in that background layer. Now I'm going to go to the middle ground and I'm going to make the continuation of the road. But this is really important. That road in the background goes down, 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 down. It goes down to places we can't see. And as it's going down, it gets wider and wider and wider because it's getting closer to us. And then it has to climb up the mountain. And it's still getting wider and wider and wider because it's getting close to us. So by the time it gets up to the top of this hill in the middle ground, it's going to be wider. So I'm in the middle ground layer. And now watch what happens. You see how much wider that layer is? Let's see. Okay, and it's getting wider as it goes out. It's not going to stay the same width. Now, it goes down and down and down, then it climbs up, 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 up. It's a lot wider by the time it gets to the foreground layer. So now here I am in the foreground layer. Make sure you're still in the correct layer. And look how much wider it is as it comes out the other side. The other thing is, because it had to go down and then come up again, when it pops up in the foreground, it's not going to match the lines in the middle ground because it got that much wider while it was hidden from view. So that's how you make a road into going off into the distance, or a path or something like that. So let me just show you what it looks like in the different layers. This is the foreground layer. Okay, I'm going to hide the foreground layer. This is the middle ground layer. Now there's the foreground layer in front of it, overlapping it. And now here's the background layer by itself, and with the middle ground in front of it, and then the foreground in front of that. So there always has to be a sense of overlapping. So if I were to take my skeleton and I were to put them in this environment, and I do file open, and I go to one of the skeletons that I just created today, this guy, let's say, and I do, let me just take my marquee and edit, copy him. Now I'm going to go back to my new project, and I'm going to do edit, paste. That's where he looks in this story. Okay, now here's the thing. He looks like he belongs way in the background. Okay, so that means he should be back here in front of the background. So make sure you're in the correct layer. So now I'm going to take him, and his head should just about touch the horizon line. Now, watch what's going to happen. I'm now going to take him, and I'm going to do layer. Well, actually, I don't even have to duplicate the layer. Well, I already have him on the clipboard. I'm going to go up to the middle ground, and I'm going to do edit, paste again. And this time he needs to be bigger, okay? So he needs to be the right size that his head is on the horizon line. Edit, transform, scale, but his feet touch the ground in the middle ground. So I'm going to hold the shift key down, and I'm going to make him bigger, and I'm going to move him. Now notice the road's going in the other direction. It's coming this way. So I not only have to move him, but I'm going to have to do edit, transform, flip horizontal, so that he's in the right orientation because he's going on this road. So this is what he would look like here. He's in the middle ground going on this road. He's gotten that much bigger, but his head is still at the horizon line. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the foreground. He's still on my clipboard. Edit, paste. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to move him so that he's at the horizon. I'm going to then do edit, transform, scale. I don't want to distort him, so I hold the shift key down. I'm going to make him big enough so that he's standing on this road, but his head is still at the horizon line. Okay. Now, the trick of all this is that, and actually I'm going to go to the middle ground, and I'm going to, actually, I'm going to go to the foreground, and I'm going to do image adjustments, curves. So I'm in the foreground, and I'm just going to kind of make this a little darker. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the middle ground, and I'm going to do image adjustments, curves, and I'm going to make it a little lighter. I'm going to go to the background, image adjustments, curves. No, that's not working for me. So I'm going to reset it. I'm going to X out of here. Image adjustments, vibrance. It's too vibrant. I'm going to make it less vibrant. And I'm going to desaturate it a little. Just a little bit. Okay, the other thing that you can do is you can change the opacity. I'm going to kind of make it fade a little. Okay, I'm not real thrilled with that. All right, so there's ways that you can adjust the background. The other thing that you can do is you can, I'm in the background layer. I can just select the black, okay? And I can do edit, free transform. And I'm just going to take that black, just the black. Okay, select, deselect. All right, now what I did in the background was I sort of stretched it out, and now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to hit the shift key and I'm going to select all the areas that are white in the background. And I'm going to do edit fill. Content aware. And it will fill it with similar color to what's around it. So I'm now going to hit select, deselect, and you see how the background now looks, the lines are a little thinner because I stretched them out. The only problem with that is that the road is now a little messed up. So what you can do is you can now go to the background and you can either redraw the road or you can move the background so it's lower. The only problem with that is if you move the background, you're also going to have to move the skeleton that's in the background so that he's lower too. Still on the road, but lower. Now, let me just add in another layer. New layer. And it's called layer 4. I'm going to change that layer to sky. And I'm going to take that sky layer and I'm going to put it below the background. So it's on the bottomest bottom layer. And now I'm going to do a gradient. I think because it's a skeleton and it's kind of a spooky night, I'm going to give it a gray sky. So it's actually just going to go from white to black. There you go, white to black or black to white. Okay. So now, if I go to this background layer and I change the opacity, it looks like it's kind of fading in the distance. That looks pretty good. And now let's look really carefully at this picture. Let's zoom in with now. If you look in here, you'll see layer 1, that's the faraway skeleton. There he is, walking along this road with his eyes on the horizon line. And layer 2, that's this skeleton, also with their eyes on the horizon line and also walking along this road. And then you've got layer 3, which is this guy, also with his eyes on the horizon line and walking along this road. And the eyes all line up with each other. And what's going on? What the horizon line is also called is the camera line. Okay, so let me make it a little smaller. Okay, so that horizon line changes depending on where your eye level is. So when you hold up a camera to a landscape, you look through that camera and the place where the earth meets the sky is even with your eyes. If you were to get up on top of a tall ladder and take a picture, the place where the earth meets the sky would be even with your eyes. If you got down on your stomach and took a picture, the place where the earth meets the sky would be even with your eyes. So the horizon line is actually not a real line. There's no real line there. It's not a constant. It changes depending on where your eye level is. Therefore, it's also called the camera line. So if you make all the figures going from background to foreground, if you line their heads up with the camera line and just make their feet at different levels, you can actually make a person look like they're moving from background to foreground. So what you can do is you can actually draw your background on a piece of paper, and you can draw a background on a piece of paper and cut it out using Photopea, a middle ground on a piece of paper, cut it out using Photopea, a foreground on a piece of paper, cutting it out using Photopea. The reason why you might want to do this is because using just a little trackpad and not having a drawing tablet, it might be difficult for you to draw any details in this landscape to make it look the way you want or to set it up the way you want. The other thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to figure out some sort of a walk cycle. You can actually create a walk cycle showing how the skeleton would be moving through space so that you can make the illusion that he's walking. So the most important things to remember is the layers of the landscape from foreground to middle ground to background, how things get smaller as they get farther away, how things move through space, and also the sequence of movements that makes up a walk cycle. Once you have those, you'll be able to create quite an interesting animation based on the skeleton dance and come up with a story. So the most important thing to do is probably experiment and play with Photopea to see if you can create a sequence of movements and animation assets. And then probably my next step would be to create a storyboard so you can figure out, instead of just experimenting with movement, tell a little story about your skeleton dance, and then create a set, an environment for it, a background, using the concept of foreground, middle ground, and background, foreground, middle ground, background, and overlapping. And then I would probably import everything into the Wick editor and see if you can create a little skeleton dance animation. So there's a lot of work to be done here. It's not an easy project. It's challenging. There's going to be a lot of thinking and creativity involved. But hopefully watching Disney's skeleton dance on YouTube will inspire you to come up with your own ideas.